Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Zion 2.0. I'm your host, Colin Morris. Today, my guest is Jessica. What's up, Jessica?
Hello, what's up?
Wait, Jessica, I noticed that your last name is showing on the Zoom, the
Oh,
Zoom
wow.
page. Should we close it? Your last name.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay,
You can
cool.
leave it there.
That's oh man, that's such an interesting thing about internet anonymity, avatars, doxing. Like it's such a like, and everyone has their own sort of relationship with it too.
Yeah.
You know, what how do you relate to it? Like how do you decide what parts of yourself to show on the internet?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think so mostly I'm on main. I don't have an alt. And the reason why I actually somewhat distinguish my name and a handle is a little bit for work, but it's not for work as in I'm scared if work find out I'm bi, something will happen. It's more that for my own like admin where like when I have to log into things because I'm a contractor, it's just a different email address. And so all the spam for all the millions of things I've logged into for work are separate. Because in general, like I'm quite like I took a decision quite early to be really, really far out because if everything's known, then no one can like, I don't know, feel like they hold something over you if you have no secrets. And that feels to me now like a very like early 20s position to have. But it's actually really nice. So I'm like very open about my sexuality, the way that I live, like things that I think, the fact that I'm polyamorous. Yeah, so because it's and I quite like being a person who doesn't mind being out and like standing at the front and like putting their head above the parapet, and being the person that like gets like shot down, so that other people can like be behind me and sort of like feel a bit safer because there's someone advocating at the front kind of thing. So I quite
Mhm.
like being really far out there. Recently I've not been saying my surname on Twitter, but I don't know how much I even need to worry about that. I'm pretty findable. You can find me quite easily.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, someone wants to if someone's like really interested in tracking someone down, regardless of how anonymous they present themselves, like people get creative, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something you
Yeah.
said about the like putting everything out in public or being sort of not being afraid to put yourself out there, even if it's sort of like a maybe more far out position.
Yeah.
How do you think about that balanced with like what does need to be kept private or secret or safe in some capacity? Like it seems to me with like the more that sensors are attached to everything and there are public, facial recognition cameras everywhere, it seems like there's almost more of a, I don't know, like an invitation to consider what wants to be kept private
Yeah.
and being really intentional about that too. It's kind of like the mystery school idea, like
No, what's that?
like esoteric schools sort of practicing in secret, because if they expose a certain level of information too early, it will be misunderstood just by its very definition of complexity or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I have a number of thoughts. So I'm really weird about certain kinds of information. Like, for example, I won't leave a review about anything anywhere,
Mm,
but that's because I don't want to do free labor.
nice. I
Um,
like that a
so,
lot.
so there's that. And then I was homeless for a year about 7 years ago. And during
Mm,
that time, I kind of did a lot of protesting and running around with anarchists, and that was great. And I think sort of interfacing with it, with how you can be anonymous and be surveilled at the same time. So like considering whether CCTV cameras are all actually manned or recorded or whatever, and how that actually works. And so trying to preserve a sense of freedom, because actually like CCTV is rarely consulted until after a crime or something. So all you have to do is like not
Mm,
get the attention in the first place. But I'm really
right.
interested in dazzle makeup, and I will never unlock my phone with my face. I don't think I'm only
Mm.
just started doing the fingerprint thing because it forced me to when I bought a new phone.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I'm kind of really weird about like biometric data. And but then I also believe that you should make as much noise as possible to like hide signals. So one should appear on CCTV and on emails saying the word bomb, and like make as much like noise, because then you can cover the clandestine activities that people might want to do. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, but actually, the other thing that it made me think of as a question was more and more in my like 30s, I suppose, especially. I actually hold my tongue like much more, and I
Mm,
don't actually say what I think about things, or even try not even to think about, to not have an opinion. Like not having opinion is quite important. But yeah, I do get that sense of it's probably best to like not say a thing to a person who might not be able to handle it, or might not be in the right place
mm.
to receive it. And that is like better than saying it anyway, because it'll be fine. So I'm finding myself doing that more and more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed some of your writing, and I heard you on Jared and Jason's Both And podcast,
Yeah.
and we definitely share an interest in developmental models and like Kagan's work, and I haven't heard you explicitly talk about integral theory, but it sort of sounds like that might be an influence as well.
No, I'm already aware of it. It's
Hmm.
Wilbur, right? Ken Wilbur.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
So I'm aware of it, but
there's
not
a lot
really.
of crossover. There's definitely a lot of crossover
Yeah.
with Kagan stuff. Um, And this is actually something I wanted to talk to you about today. I used to be really, really into those models, those developmental models,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and lately I am not. like I'm not.
Ooh.
Like I'm not at all. And I've been asking myself like why? Like why have I lost that interest? It was such a north star for me as like an academic interest, but it also kind of in some ways was informing my own sort of growing up process too.
Yeah.
Um, but eventually what I came to is um, I just didn't really enjoy the communities that were forming around those ideas necessarily. They just like weren't fun to
Yeah.
hang out with. Like it seemed like there were there was sort of a personality type of people that really, really like to intellectualize things.
Right.
Really liked having maps to understand their reality.
Yeah.
And now I kind of just want to hang out with people that are embodied and like to dance and like don't get hung up on concepts so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm like kind of feeling into what that's about, and that's like my first pass at it. But I'm curious to hear your take on like maybe periods of like being inspired by certain concepts or ideas, and then maybe not disillusionment or integrating them into a more holistic way of seeing the world.
Yeah. Huh. Well, so interestingly, there's a PDF you can get hold of, which is an essay by a person called Susan, I think, Cook. It was Keegan's
Oh, Susan
student,
Cook Greuter.
and it's Cook Greuter, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was reading they have like a sort of two versions of stage 5 model. And one of
Mm.
them is becoming deeply interested in your own body as one of the only sources of truth.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah.
like post like identity stage 4 sort of way.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I'm having fun
so
in that. I'm having fun in that place right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's all inside of, you could put that in a framework anyway, or certainly that's what I would be tempted to do, because I've read it in that model and I like that model. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't feel like I've either come across communities that annoy me in my favorite models, or felt like pissed or beyond the model. Because they're bounded anyway. They're useful for certain things, and then they're not useful for other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I feel like with I still love the Keegan model, and I love the extra stuff that people have put on it. So the Kurt Goiter
Mm-hmm.
extras, I think, are really, really valuable. So I really like that, and it was definitely a North Star for me as well. I think the closest thing I can get to getting close to feeling what you feel is possibly like people who won't walk the walk. Like, yeah, they know the theory, and they're the kinds of people, and they're we're all drawn to Twitter because we're the cognitive types that like words, right? And so everyone's talking about these models, and then like, how much are they actually doing? Because I feel like these models were good for like really leaning into something that I wasn't sure about, and then actually doing it in the world, and saying different things to your friend, and doing different actions, and and growing, I suppose. And I guess if there's just too much talk and not enough walk, then yeah, I don't talk to those people.
Okay, speaking of talking and walking, I think that's a
Mhm.
perfect segue into talking about the Sense Maker workshop. Can
Okay.
you, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that project, and like what was the inspiration, and can you talk a bit about the experience, how it went? Because it ended last week or 2 weeks ago.
Last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, well, then I guess an easy answer to the inspiration is that I have a spare room in my share house, and I live in London. And so sometimes people come to London, and they kind of go onto a network and say, hey, I'm in London, do you want to meet up? And normally I say, come and stay at my house, like have dinner, like sleep in a real bed and stuff. And so they're like, oh, that's very generous, thanks. And when they come, they then kind of go, oh my God, this is amazing. This was amazing. Like the conversations that we've managed to have is amazing because we already have a digital relationship, and there's a lot of like shared context. We've all read the same things, or interested in the same topics. And so the kind of flow that you can get in is very, very high throughput, at least. I hesitate to say output. There's a very high throughput of information. So yeah, and then the person goes away, like at the end, they're like, this was amazing. It's been great to meet in real life. And then they go away and forget about it. And like everyone gets that experience once with me, or twice, 3 times. But like I've had it over and over and over again because of offering this room. So yeah, it was the SenseMaker workshop is basically trying to sell the idea to everyone else that meeting people in real life is a really good idea, but before they know that it's a good idea. And then providing the venue for that. So that's the initial inspiration for it. And yeah, it's just like Twitter people, IRL. It's great. Let's go. Yeah.
And let's say there's somebody listening to this that's like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Like Twitter IRL, like Sense Maker workshop. Like if you had to I don't know, if you had to talk about it to maybe like your grandma or something, like can you tease apart like some of the dynamics about like what's the subculture? Who are the people that are coming to this? What are they interested in?
Well, if I was saying it to my grandma, I'd say it was a philosophy cafe. That's it. And people go, oh right, and it's to discuss ideas. And people go, oh okay. And but then what specifically the ideas? Well, I don't know. I fancy myself as a sort of like post or meta thing, post something. And I also sort of fancy myself as a mimetic mediator. So I actually hoped that a number of different people from different tribes on Twitter, and now I'm referring to the culture war, would come along. But I think that mainly like my friends, the overlap of Twitter, of me, Twitter and London in real life was quite small. It was like some rationalists and kind of, less wrong and Slate Star Codex, modern rationalists, and so like a load of lurkers who were all wonderful. And I think that they all kind of feel some sort of drawn to the sense of like something meta, where you basically kind of say, there's something wrong with the way that the world, we're told that the world is this, and it has these containers, and it has these systems, and they don't really work the way they said, the way they said on the tin that they work. And I'm interested in that, and I like words, so I'm on Twitter. Like that's I think that's all I can say. A lot of men, actually, hardly any women.
Oh, interesting.
So that's interesting. I think that's probably because of my vibe, but also, where are they? What are they doing? Like,
Where are the
come on,
women?
where are the women? Yeah. But anyway,
Well,
that's
I'm curious to hear your answer to that. Where are like I've heard you talk a little bit about some of the circles that you used to run in, like more
yeah.
social justice,
Mhm.
activism, and feminist circles. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, maybe, like it seems like there could have been some overlap with some of those communities, but it sounds like maybe there wasn't.
Yeah, I wondered whether the thing is, some of them are a bit incendiary, and I kind of wanted to have pleasant discussions and not like, you know, fights. So there, yeah. But do you know, oh God, this is terrible. So the people that I knew just in like for general feminist stuff, I knew them in a city called Bristol, which is not far from London. And this is terrible, but I think almost all of them have babies. It's not terrible, but they have young children.
Mm,
So them and their husbands, and like, I see their husbands on Instagram as well. They're really, really lovely folk, and they're clearly doing equal childcare, but they're essentially they're parents, and
yeah.
parents just drop out of the game. So I've kind of
Uh,
called myself Generation Auntie, where it's like the 30 and 40-year-old people who don't have children have their own special happy hour crew where they're in one bucket and the parents are just so sucked into the other bucket, because my sister is a parent, so I've been
yeah.
watching her, and like your only friends are the mums, are the parents, people at playgroup, people at baby school, like people at high school, and it's just this whole other world.
Mm,
So yeah, I think the children is a part of it, at least.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have mad respect for people playing in that game. The
Yeah,
parent
I
game.
really do, but I want more respect for people playing my game.
Say more about that.
Oh, well, so I think it's actually really, really hard to not have children.
Mm,
It's much harder than you'd think, because otherwise more people would do it.
mm,
and I think there's no cultural support whatsoever. In fact, there's constant cultural bombardment of when you're going to get married, when you're going to have children, aren't you getting old, TikTok, blah, 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 your womb is shriveling, and all this stuff, like constantly. But there's
mm,
no like, well done, thank you, here's your 50,000 carbon credits for not having a child, or like have £1 million tax break because you haven't had a child. There's nothing
mm.
like that. And I
Yeah.
think it's an active every single time I have sex, every single time I have to do a lot of technology to not get pregnant. And so
Yeah.
do my partners. And so like, and there's no like, well done for that. Like, yeah, you don't get
Yeah.
any, you don't get a special savings account where the government puts £5 a year in it for like your condom usage or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think there's any support for not having children, and not having children is one of the answers to like our ecological problem right now, I think. And yeah, and honestly, I'm not having children because I don't want to perpetuate the cycle of shite that my like parental and just before generations were, falling into by accidentally getting pregnant all over the place and then not being very good parents. And I don't think I would necessarily be a good parent just by the simple fact I didn't have good parents. So I'm trying to like end a cycle of rubbish,
Mm, yeah.
but there's no like, thank you, well done, you're emotionally strong enough to not have a child. Like there's no, I don't know.
Yeah. This is a really great path to walk down. I'm glad I'm
Cool.
glad I'm glad we landed on this, because I've been thinking I've been listening to a lot and reading a lot about thinkers that are doing sort of deep historical studying of the role of the tribe. So
Okay.
conceptualizing as the human as a tribal animal. So the identity isn't the atomized individual as it became when I think therefore I am was tweeted out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was like your identity was actually your web of relationships in a tribe. And So the question that you have that I hear you asking, I'm filtering it through the lens of like the things that I'm listening to these days, but
Sure.
is like what is the tribal role of the person and maybe the woman who chooses not to have children?
Yeah.
Because it seems like there's an opportunity to start to define what that is. And you
Yeah.
said earlier that like you like to be um uh more far out there and do it, semi publicly. You're
Yeah.
writing, you're speaking, you're doing these things, you're on Twitter.
Yeah.
Um and it seems like there is an opportunity to like figure out what the tribal role is.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
then it can become more constructive rather than reacting against this culture that doesn't support it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, so there's already tribal roles, I think, because in a tribal sense, there's no one strongly knows whose child is who, I think.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
that even the whole idea of a heterosexual pair doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see which woman has been pregnant and given birth, but you don't know who any of the fathers are for real, for sure. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
really worry about that. And then like everyone takes turns looking after the kids. That's kind of, so it's not like the mum of the one child and the heterosexual pair looks after children. It's just a big mix. There's just like young ones and old ones, and everyone takes a turn, and the really baby ones have to be kept away. And so that's that. So firstly, all
Yeah.
the women and all the men can take care of children, whether they
Right.
like birth them or not.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, I call it generation auntie. Like, I think it's extremely important for children to have multiple adults to relate to. So
Yeah.
being an aunt or an uncle actually should be like venerated a little bit, because I mean, I was a strange child. I like probably a lot of us on Twitter can understand this. I was a strange kid and my parents didn't understand me. But
Right.
I think that my like further away relatives would have understood me. But I had no
Mhm.
contact with any of my uncles or aunties, or any of my grandparents except one. And I think that I would have flourished better. I actually saw this with my partner of a very long time. He was not like any of his family. And then I went to a funeral, sadly, but I went to a funeral in their family, and there was this one uncle called Robert, and he was exactly the same as my partner. I was like, look at him.
Mhm.
He's like kind of dandy and like, like got these like gestures that make him seem gay, even though he's not gay. And he's like wearing a little bow tie, whereas everyone else is in like a sort of weird suit. And he was just the same. And he was an uncle. So yeah, so like connecting with children is huge for aunties and uncles. It's not
Yeah.
just about parents. Then where does the wise woman come from? The wise woman may have had their own children, but
Yeah.
wise woman's got to like have a lot of life experience to actually be wise. It's got to be out like
Yeah.
picking plants as much as they are concerned with babies. So
Right.
yeah, I personally think tribes should or maybe were ruled by three people, not one or two. So I
Yeah.
think that you need the chieftain, the shaman, and the wise woman. And like the chieftain's typically male, which makes sense to keep all the young men in line. But the shaman and the wise woman can both be either men or women.
Mhm.
So you've got two
Yeah.
roles open there for
Right.
either gender. Yeah, and you need
Yeah,
shaman
and
and wise woman, not just one, because you normally wrap it together in just shaman. But I think
yeah.
you can split that role.
And I've heard the shaman, the role is like typically been they're more go-betweens, like they're bisexual or they're androgynous or like they
Mm,
actually they don't see a lot of the boundaries that most people see. Like a shaman in like a tribal society would be confused why people of different skin colors would be fighting with each other. They'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like I just went into the woods and did drugs with them, and they're fun. They're great. Like what are you guys fighting about?
yeah,
So
and
yeah,
and I think they do that deliberately. They know that there's a boundary for other people, so they act like there isn't one to highlight that there is one. I think,
yeah,
and to like play with it.
yeah. So I mean, thinking about this tribal mapping concept and putting it into modernity, it obviously, there can be insights pulled from the tribal structures, but life looks very different today, um, and it seems like the what used to be the tribe is now the subculture. It
Essentially,
seems to
yeah.
it's like it's not necessarily, it can be, but it's not necessarily the family you're born into.
Yeah.
It's not the tribal structure is not maintained or supported based on the nuclear family model. So what a lot of people are doing is they're building their own tribes,
Yeah.
often mediated through the digital world. So I'm curious, like thinking about those roles, like the chieftain, the shaman, and like the matriarch or the wise
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
Um, like what what is the role of the shaman today, do you think?
Uh, Sorry, I feel like we topic just shifted a little bit because I was following what you were saying about chosen tribes a bit more.
Oh,
Anyway,
well, we can go down that thread.
yeah,
What was
maybe
what was the piece that you were picking up on?
I'll percolate about the shaman's role. Um, yeah, well, so in the subcultures that I'm in, like the chosen family is just well, it has a word, it's chosen family, and then it's huge. So I'm in there's a little bit of feminist subculture, but then especially the LGBT subculture.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of adjacent to that is the polyamorous subculture as well, where um, it's well known that you cohabit or do Christmas and Valentine's Day and birthdays like with your chosen family because you're literally estranged from your biological family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even that it's like, oh yeah, like sorry, for those kinds of groups it's the only way to survive in a way. So
Right.
it's it's just how life is, and I sort of forget that people outside of it kind of have to grow to this realization sort of much more gently, and then they're like,
Mm.
oh, maybe my friendship group could become as important as my family. But then typically they just have babies and go back to the the heterosexual assumption, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
they go back to where their parents live because you need more than two people to look after children.
Mm-hmm.
But still you end up in your own house and separate and still 2.4 kids and things. Whereas I think Generation Auntie and queer people do that a lot less. Like they continue to cohabit for the rest of their lives with other adults that they've chosen to be with rather than
Mm-hmm.
the group family. So shaman, I don't know. I feel like it's come up a lot. I'm so contrarian that I almost don't want to talk about it because now it's too popular.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Because everyone's like, oh, shamans, yeah, they're really useful. And like, it's true. I suppose the most interesting thing that would talk about is wondering how to become a shaman. That's one of the things that I'm interested in personally.
Uh-huh.
And it's like an urban version of that. So, uh, yeah, taking on the responsibility of providing a frame for someone else to like push their boundaries and the responsibility of that. And I think it's as serious as the responsibility of having children or the responsibility of being a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sort of exploring that a little bit, but I'm not going to go into too much detail because we're
Nice.
live.
Yeah. That does feel like one of the places where like privacy is important.
Yeah, I mean, interfacing with the legal system and choosing when to show that it's out of date and when not to is a nice choice to be able to maintain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what were some lessons or insights that came from we're going to jump back to the sense maker workshop because
Sure.
we went down a path and I think I want to go back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, what were like at the end of it, like what were some insights that came from it?
Would you like a philosophical insights? Because a lot of mine are just like personal ones.
No, personal sounds good.
Yeah. So I realized that I made it was like it was like interviewing 30 people to be my new friends.
I love that.
Yeah. And I stole
That's
that from
amazing.
Samo Buria because he came and spoke at the event, and he spoke for about 3 hours. So he said, it's when you've got an audience of about that size, it's great because it's like doing an interview with 20 people all at once, and you get to see like who's reacting to you and interested and who's engaged and who isn't, and so you can like choose those people to be your new friends. So yeah, I think for me, I've got more new friends, like, and people who live really near to me instead of in San Francisco.
Oh, that's
Which is really
great.
nice. Yeah. I kind of have an answer to like, can you put people in a silent room and they'll actually talk to each other? And the answer is yes, you can, which is great. I actually facilitated very little, and I had a policy of no music because for certain kinds of Aspie and autistic people, like and even people with hearing problems, if you have music in the background, they actually struggle to be able to hear. So I said no music, like fairly prominently, which of course makes it really awkward for allistic people who walk into a room and there's like 2 people in there and it's silent. But actually, yeah, there's a lot of good faith. People did talk to each other and they wanted to. After the sun went down, people were more likely to talk and really get into stuff than when it was daylight. That was interesting. People sort of worked more in the day, but once it got to past 5:30, everyone would like close their laptops and start talking to each other.
Oh, so it was just sort of like an open hangout space. Were there
Yes.
structured talks? There were structured talks too?
There were some structured talks. I basically put some structure in just in case people were like, I'm not going to walk to a room not knowing who's going to be there or what's going to be there, and then just accept that this is a thing I should do. So I put some people in there, and also to spread the word a bit. So I deliberately chose people who had a blog, who had a Twitter, and then who could retweet that they were going to be there to try and like draw in customers. But yeah, no, it was open every day, and it was like co-working space. If you follow the SenseMaker workshop, you can see some of the pictures. It's just a lounge. It's like someone's lounge, and it's got loads of tables, loads of chairs, loads of sofas, and just the permission to talk about philosophy, I suppose. Yeah, and it was open like from the morning, like 11 in the morning till 7 at night, and then Friday night was like it was open a bit later. So yeah.
I'm curious to hear like what were some of the conversations or topics of discussion that that made you like feel most alive or energized in some way? Because philosophy cafe, like
Yeah.
it's pretty broad spectrum. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
like what are the ideas that are like top of mind for you and are getting
Yeah.
you
I
excited?
can't even remember the specifics. Like I'll try to, but I was like in public facing mode for
Oh
9
yeah.
days straight, which is a lot for an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of struggling. I mean, on Saturday we did an unconference, and so with that, like the audience just put topics in. So some of those topics were, well, what did we actually talk about? We talked about bell ringing. We had a lightning talk about bell ringing for 5 minutes,
Wait,
and
what
that
is
was
that?
when you ring a church bell by pulling a
Oh,
rope.
literally
Yeah,
bell
and
ringing. Okay.
yeah, but the person actually explained it and said that it's I've forgotten the algorithmic music making, because you can only pull each bell one in the order, and you also can't ring one twice and then another one. So all you can do is change the position of which bell gets rung at a
Oh,
time.
interesting.
And so yeah, it kind of just connected immediately with all the rationalist people there that are like computer scientists, because that the person describing it was like, this is ancient algorithmic music. So that was just so cool. Like with a 5-minute thing on bell ringing, you're suddenly talking about like, yeah, these really interesting aspects to what it is. So that was one. We talked about flow states, and how to get in them, and or how to do them more, or what counts as a flow state, which was quite interesting.
What does count as a flow state?
Well, the person said that someone had observed his friendship group and said, this conversation is, you are all in flow right now, because they were having like 4 conversations at once, because they were playing a role-playing game, chatting outside of the role-playing game, like to each other as well. And apparently there was about 4 levels of conversation going on at the same time, and each like speech act was correctly received as being in the correct conversation. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
effortlessly. So that
Yeah.
apparently that could, you know, counts as a flow state. So there was that. There was a lot of cerebral ones, a lot of physical ones, or a mixture of physical and cerebral. So we talked about flows. That was fun. But again, I was mainly just like, I don't think did anything surprise me? I mean, I loved Samo Budia. Like, he was amazing. So he studied civilizational collapse. He
Mhm.
wanted to talk about authority, intellectual authority, and how that gets invested. And the answer is by institutions. He didn't talk
Mm.
about that at all. Either of those two things. He talked about we got stuck on functional institutions, which was really interesting. And everyone really wanted to be like, what do you mean by functional? And he was like, I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to give you examples. And everyone hated that. They were like, no, you must define functional.
Define functional. And he was like, no, here's an example. Like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
put it in a context. When it's working this way, it's functional.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that was a really interesting sticking point in the conversations that we were having.
Did he highlight any functional
like he
institutions
said,
that are operating today?
he said that, well, because he mentioned countries, but of course institutions or systems can be anything. They can be a corporation, they can be a group of friends, it can be, you know, government. But with governments, he's gonna watch this and I'm gonna misquote him, but he said that the government of Israel is a functional constitution, for example. So it's functional. And who else did he mention? Estonia. Oh my god, what were the other ones? Yeah, they were surprising examples, and they were for surprising reasons. And again, I'm actually not going to mention the reasons, because some of them were good reasons and some of them were bad reasons why he said they were functional. And he was trying to show this, it's like that it was an amoral or a sort of, yeah, I guess amoral is the right word, inquiry. It's like, do these institutions set out to do they achieve what they've set out to achieve under their own terms? And some of those goals are like abhorrent and some of them aren't. And so he kind of drew attention to the fact that when he gave an example that was abhorrent versus an example that wasn't, that the room like had a different feeling in it. And he was kind of trying to emphasize that his work is about being like, objective is the wrong word, but like having this kind of zoomed out view and just kind of saying like, what is functional and what isn't, what institutions work and what don't. And I've been thinking for a long time that if one of the benefits of getting a bit meta to things is that you can look at things that you find abhorrent, because there's a lot of learning to happen there. So like to cut yourself off from most of the world because you personally disagree with it means that you've got a lot less data coming in. So that's one of the strengths. Like some people say like, what's the point of being fluid mode or Keegan stage 5? And I think one of the answers is that you kind of unblock a pipeline of information, and you can look at the world neutrally almost and be like, well, this is just as it is.
Yeah. And in theory that brings more choice making capacity. You're able to see a wider range of options.
I think so. And you can also see a wider range of things that could attack you. Like you're just as blind to your enemies. If you're like, oh, I hate them, I'm not going to look at them. You'll have no idea when they come for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the language or the sort of caveat or the stipulation with moving through these different developmental stages is like higher isn't better. Higher just means more complex. So it's kind of like the idea of like more money, more problems. You know?
Yeah, I think that's true. I also try and emphasize as well that different ones are suitable for different situations. So you should absolutely be doing stage 3 like communal mode, like tribal mode, most of the time, you know, like with your friends and family. You shouldn't say, oh no, can you change the date of the funeral because I've got a calendar clash, like, which would be a stage 4 reaction. Like obviously you don't do that. God.
right.
So yeah, there's different, like there's complexity, sure, and you can, and I do think that there's a linear aspect to it. There's a linear aspect to physical learning and there's a linear aspect to like mental and emotional learning as well, and it can all be uneven and it can all be rewritten, but yeah, like higher number isn't better. It is just kind of extra.
Hmm.
And then
What
yeah, extra problems.
what are you seeing as like the important linear aspects of it, of like that sort of growth?
Um, I just don't think you can do some stuff before you've done other stuff.
Hmm.
So I don't think that you can like competently skate around with your personality systems if you haven't empathized with another person yet. Because how do you empathize with yourself if you don't understand someone else? Or yeah, I'm gonna give rubbish examples, I think, with this, but um, yeah, or you can't sort of say, oh, I've got multiple identities before you've had one identity. Like you've got
Hmm.
to forge an identity before you can then forge another one.
Right.
It's just that. It's just that there's obvious steps where you've got to do the thing first and then you do it again and then it becomes different because you've done it twice. That's all.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. I kind of want to go back to that bit about the question I was having about the social justice crew, and like old, maybe
Yes.
kind of like the older feminist crew that you used to run in.
Yeah.
Um, what what sort of options are on the table to interface with with that type of tribe, um, without it being incendiary, if that's possible? Because your first response when I brought it up was like, you were like, oh well, I want to have pleasant conversation, I don't want it to get incendiary.
Yeah. I mean, that's because I kind of have like personal relationships with a couple of people, but their job is to be incendiary. That's it. Um,
Mm,
so I just didn't want to invite them because that's the mode, like because they're like
that's the mode,
professional.
right?
Yeah, professional incendiaries. Maybe less so now, but um, so that's what I was immediately thinking of. Um, my other feminist friends are from a town that I don't live in anymore. So at the moment, I'm more connected to like LGBT, and feminism has to go together with that. But I think that feminism itself has changed a lot, where it it reached a peak of complexity and nuance, and then like social media just like smashed it out of the sky.
Right.
And
Right.
now we just have like the loudest and most vicious win,
Yeah.
which isn't good for any discourse in any kind. So I think even I reckon if I'd have invited anyone to Sense Maker workshop, it would have been fine, because you're creating a frame that's like we're in real life, we're face to face, like flesh and blood, right in front of each other. So that in itself is probably just fine. But
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think maybe just there's a couple of things with feminism and LGBT land where if you just don't say the bad words, you're fine. And there's like 5 bad words. So there are people, I invite people from outside our community to come to our house parties. And I give
Hmm.
them a little document that says like these are the 5 bad words.
Mm. What are
This is
they?
what you don't
What are
say.
what are the 5 words you can't say?
Well, you don't misgender someone.
Hmm.
So you don't just say like, oh, he's wearing a dress. That's
Hmm.
bad. Uh,
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
and the easy way to avoid all of those things is you just got to switch out to they and them and people and someone and that
Hmm.
person over there. And yeah,
Hmm.
like it doesn't take long to just remember that. Yeah, and I actually had to change it. I like I had to change myself from typing they to typing he, because someone had used he. But I'm so used to saying they and them and that person and someone and all
Mm.
of these like neutral options
For anyone,
for anyone. For anyone. Yeah, yeah,
regardless
yeah.
of how they're presenting.
Exactly, because yeah, I mean, and if someone tells you the pronouns or they say, "Oh, I'd rather you said she," then sure, then you
Hmm.
you go with their wishes. But in general, what normally happens at parties is that someone says, "That dude over there told me to get a drink," and then the dude over there hears it, and they're not a dude, or they don't identify as a dude, or whatever. So
Hmm.
you just need to say that person over there,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
someone in the other room, or they
Right.
said I should get this. Yeah, so there's that.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
that's the
that one's
easy way to
doable.
Yeah, so don't misgender someone.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are like what is and isn't polite to ask about. So you can ask about someone's pronouns, and probably if you're a stranger but you've been chatting for a while, you could probably ask them what their sexuality is, because that's kind of interesting. It's kind of half private, half not private.
Mhm.
But you probably shouldn't ask them like what their kinks are straight away, like, unless you're
Straight
getting
away,
into that,
yeah.
you know, space. And also, like, don't ask people if they've had surgery, because everyone wants to
Mm,
say that. It's like, oh, have you had operations to change your gender? Um,
yeah.
just don't.
I would never think to ask that.
Yeah, well, but well, I bring in people who are just not used to these environments at all.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I don't well. So but also I don't know what they know and don't know. Oh, the other thing I
Right.
normally just explained that a lot of people are autistic, so don't be sarcastic. Um,
Nice. Yeah.
that's it. Yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah. And so like if someone's looks weird and shy, or they say something, or they look scared of you, it's maybe because you're doing sarcastic jokes. Like just say what you mean, basically. Try to like have this kind of connection to your honesty.
Mm.
Yeah, because a bunch of trans folks come to my parties, and there's a co-indication between being trans and being autistic. And I have a lot of autistic friends as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think those are my main points. Like, don't ask about kinks, don't ask about surgery, don't misgender someone. Do ask about pronouns and sexuality. Don't be sarcastic. Like, that's like the 5 rules.
Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty easy. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. I
Nothing
fully
too
believe
difficult in
that,
there.
like, yeah, the social justice agenda can be like codified and then just like made a new norm, and then we can all like be happy because we know how to behave.
Right. Yeah. I've just been thinking about that. Professional incendiarism or
Right.
what's the word? Incendiariness.
Yeah.
um
No
yeah,
idea.
so when you say like professional, it's like I guess sometimes there are actually like actual financial benefits tied to being incendiary. And I
Yeah.
think most of the time it's attentional currency. It doesn't actually have to be connected to money. It can just be
Uh,
pure attention. It just can be eyes on your content or people paying attention to you, or it's like
sure. Well,
gaining status in like in a social group, essentially.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't be inviting those people to Sense Maker Workshop. They're not making any sense.
Yeah, true. That's true.
Yeah. No, the people that I would have invited are paid per click and stuff, so it
Right.
is money. Yeah, for the ones where it isn't, if it's just attention, I mean, yeah, bless them. But
Bless
it's
them. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
deep, deep insecurity, and I feel quite sorry for them.
Yeah.
But also like a way to sort out has someone who has an interesting point, but they're kind of deliberately incendiary, versus someone who is just desperately insecure and is trying to like stir up attention, is
Mhm.
to just ask them a question. It's
Mm.
like the ultimate that it's oh yeah, I was going to write a blog post on this and I realized there's only one sentence. It's just that ask questions. So
Mhm.
um and normally you can really get at someone's like true belief quite quickly when you ask a
Mhm.
question. And especially if you ask someone to explain something and they can't explain it, they normally back down on their emotional like engagement with the question as well. So they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I actually don't know the ins and outs. So if they don't know, they'll back down emotionally. But if they do know, then you'll get a really interesting answer. So
Yeah.
yeah, questions are amazing. I actually, with your last guest, mimetic values, I was the, they were talking about gender with me, and their
Uh-huh.
opening tweet was extremely incendiary.
Uh-huh.
But then we engaged in dialogue, and it's because yeah, it's so tempting to reply back, to yell or kind of
Mm.
say you're wrong, or like really get into
Mhm.
like a fight straight away. And like the way to not do it is, yeah, ask a question. And so we ended up at a very nuanced position, a very beautiful, interesting position on gender, which you would never expect mimetic values to hold. um So that was lovely. So yeah, you just ask them questions and see. It normally pops the bubble either one way or the other. And
Mm,
yeah, like as soon as they realize that's what you're doing and they don't like it because the emotional fire's gone, or they don't know what they're talking about, they'll stop answering.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love seeing stuff on Twitter where someone will say something that's like kind of like tonally confusing, in maybe whether it's incendiary, whether it's like overly self-deprecating. It's just like kind of confusing.
Yeah,
Um, someone replying it to it with just genuine curiosity about like where they're coming from.
absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. It's the best possible way forward. It's probably the only way forward. And that kind of connects with me and my like polyamory philosophy, I suppose, because you do a lot of like actually being actually honest instead of kind of hiding behind all your insecurities or trying to so that you can navigate what it's like to be jealous and still be polyamorous, for example. So that's my
Mm,
history with it. But it's beautiful.
yeah. Can we double click on polyamory?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'm curious if is it a is it a subculture or lifestyle or just conscious choice of how you want to relate with other people that you see as being um, just that, like a subculture,
Yeah.
defined as something as an antithesis against the norm, or do you see it as like a position that like a more like a political position that's like you want to argue for more people to adopt this way of being because you think more
Hmm.
people it would be better off if more people live this way.
Yeah. No, I think well, for me personally, it's definitely just a conscious choice. It's almost actually, unlike almost anything else, it's almost a lifestyle.
Mm,
Yeah, and it's kind of, I mean, I really loved it because it was so like against the norm. I like that kind of stuff. Um, but no, I don't think that I would politically like lobby that more people should be polyamorous.
mhm.
Like it's really not for everyone.
Yeah,
I think it would be kind of cool if it was a vaguely discussed option rather than monogamy being this like oh.
yeah.
But monogamy has its uses and polyamory actually doesn't have answers to some of the questions that are posed by our society, and I think monogamy is a great answer and polyamory doesn't have a good answer. Like for example, what do you do with all the guys that aren't dead because we don't have wars anymore and stuff? Like I do think that there was a sort of like dangerous element to tribal life that we don't have anymore. And
Right.
monogamy is a great answer. You know, every man gets one woman. Like, be quiet. Like, don't don't kill people. And you know, that's kind of an old but still fairly relevant answer, I think, with
Mhm.
monogamy. So I don't think
Definitely.
that we should abandon it. I don't think I would politically lobby for more polyamory. I don't mind about getting more partners because actually I go fishing in the straight, not the straight, in the monogamous world anyway, because monogamy is actually covered in lots of non-monogamous practices, but they
Uh,
have to be clandestine in a way. So like, I think that's kind of fine. Like, I don't want to upset that. I think the only thing that I do lobby for politically is adult cohabitation. Um,
mm,
actually, no, I don't live with any of my partners. It's kind of well known that you shouldn't live with your partners in polyamorous circles. So I live with friends and like chosen
mhm,
people, and I think
mhm,
that it would be very nice if politically, taxes wise, mortgage wise, house building wise, that there was much more of a recognition that it would be good to live in groups of 6 or 7 or 10 or 20 than in
mhm,
groups of 2. And yeah, I wish that all of the high rises with a million one-bedroom box flats in them had a few more like 6 or 20 bedroom apartments inside them. And I
mm,
wish I could get a group mortgage with more than one person, and that was easy. And yeah, like stuff like that, like practical things.
mhm.
And I wish I could get tax breaks for like being in a committed relationship with someone who's not my husband
Right.
or wife. Mm.
Yeah.
But that's adjacent to polyamory, I think.
Yeah. Um, what are the major uh like pitfalls or like initial mistakes that one might make, uh someone who's transitioning from their only conception of relating with someone is in a monogamous context,
Yeah.
and then they're like, I want to try polyamory, and then they
Yeah.
suddenly just switch gears and move over, and they're a complete newbie beginner. Like,
Yeah.
what are some common mistakes that people should
Mm.
sort of look out for?
I mean, I think you have to make them anyway. So
Yeah, that's a good
I
answer.
actually wouldn't advise against. You should do these. If I say any of these things, you should do them and not feel bad if you did do them, because we all did. So I can only
Mm.
really point out common things that seem to then change. But well, you've got the one penis policy. That's fun. So
Oh,
uh,
tell me about that.
well, often a man and a woman are going to open their relationship, but like so that the woman who is bi can sleep with women, basically, which is actually how it happened with me as well. But it was, yeah, it's interesting that some people say that if it's a woman that your girlfriend is sleeping with, it doesn't count, or you don't get jealous of it. And so anyway, couples who are doing that, everyone else says, oh, they've got a, like, they literally write one PP. So it's a one penis policy. Anyone can date anyone as long as it's women.
As long as it's women, okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of funny. I think that you can have your heart broken by your partner like leaving you for a woman just as much as you can if they leave you for a man.
Mm.
And you should really worry about the emotions around what happens if your partner wants to leave you like right away, instead of just being like, oh, it's fine, it's only women, so she obviously won't leave me. That's just a way to delay, like not considering what it is to be in an open relationship and what the risks are and things like that.
Right.
So that's one that's quite funny. People normally tell their partners that they can date anyone and sleep with anyone that they want, but they can't fall in love with them, which is sweet because that's impossible. You
Yeah.
can't stop feelings happening, and if
Right.
you're trying to stop the feelings happening, again, that means you're ignoring or trying to like cut out the possibility that feelings are going to get involved, because
Mm-hmm.
they are. And the risk with non-monogamy is that if someone has feelings for someone else, then they'll leave you. Like, that's the fear.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you'd have to try as quickly as possible to get to the place where it's okay if they leave you. And like, really, your relationship should have been there anyway, right? Like, a good relationship, it's, you don't want to like force the person to stay with you. You want them
Yeah.
to be with you because they want to be with you.
Exactly. Right.
So yeah, so really, like, yeah, if you're saying like you can date other people but don't fall in love with them, it means you're avoiding the key crux of all relationships, which is you're scared of them, you're scared of losing them. And so
Yeah.
polyamory is a great way to explore how to be secure in yourself and in your relationships. um and really, you could do that in any relationship. It's just
Right.
that polyamory like forces it on you because you've immediately chucked the rules out the window and having to make it up yourself now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I heard
those
you
those
talk about
spring to
I
mind.
heard about you talk about this somewhere. It may have been on the Both and podcast, but you're saying like it's like it always boils down to sort of personal responsibility. Like like
Yeah.
the conclusions always lead to oh, what's coming up in me right now? It's my insecurity. Okay, how do I work with this insecurity? And it's kind of like this um yeah, it sounds like a really elegant way to really just like uh get to the essence of what is motivating you in a relationship and what some of your blind spots are, and
Yeah,
some of your
absolutely.
weaknesses maybe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it'll get there very fast.
Hmm.
And it'll get there, like, you'll go there because the rewards are potentially quite great.
Mm.
So it's, for a certain kind of person, it's a really good one because it's really motivating, um, and like fast. Like, you get into hot water very, very quickly. So you can potentially learn quite quickly, which is really nice. But I do
Mm.
think that, for example, people who have been married for a very long time, I think that they uh, go through this process as well, where they've changed as people, and they want to support each other still, or they stay together for whatever reason. And maybe it was really bad for a while and then it became good again. And I think that a lot of the questions come up in like really long-term monogamous relationships as well. It's in a
Mhm.
different way, but yeah, I think it's not just polyamory that does this. But yeah, I do think there are some people, some people are just crying out to be polyamorous and they just need someone to like pluck
Yeah.
them off a tree and be like, okay, we're doing this. I've done that for a few people, and yeah, it's been like more successful the more experience that I had of it, and
Uh,
they're very happy that I like trained them.
okay, so what are some of those you said like the rewards are great or something like that. Like what are some of the rewards like if you choose to go through this sort of process of radical personal responsibility and
Yeah.
relating with other people?
Well, I mean, the headline reward is you get to have sex with a bunch of people. And polyamorous people are like, no, it's not all about sex. And I'm like, it is kind of about sex though,
Yeah, totally.
right?
It's like the biggest drive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's, we're never gonna, it's never gonna go away, this whole like it's only about sex. Because it's interesting because monogamy is only about sex as well.
Uh-huh.
Because there's only one rule in monogamy, and it's that you shouldn't have sex with anyone else. Like there's no other rule.
Right.
And then there's a lot of cultural baggage, I suppose, like you should have rings or you should go on dates or you should live together or whatever. But like mainly
Yeah.
it's like, did you or did you not like have sex with someone else that wasn't me? And then
Right.
that's the rule. So monogamy is all
Mhm.
about sex. So polyamory is actually less about sex than monogamy is, because the sex is kind of like, it's neither here nor there. There's sort of lots of things going on. There's calendars, there's scheduling, there's fitting everyone in, there's making sure that your partners have enough toothbrushes at the house that you stay in, and there's a lot of complicated things to deal with polyamory that aren't sex. But yeah, the headline is you get to have sex, you get to have the kinds of sex that you want, you get to have it with the kinds of people that you want. So
Mm.
it's like having a friend where some mates you go and see the football, and some mates, sorry, soccer,
Mhm.
and some mates you go to the zoo or the museum, or
Yeah.
you talk about books. And so it's just the same, and like with partners, like firstly partners and their interests, but also then their sexual interests. So like, yeah, people like or don't like certain things in bed, so you get to like find people to do all of your things with. And the
Yeah.
partners, like, this definitely happened to me as I was opening up. I suddenly felt relief that my partner was getting something that they liked doing that I didn't like doing,
Mm.
and I felt glad, and I was
Mhm.
like relieved for myself and happy for them, which is really interesting when they're having sex with someone else, doing the thing
Yeah.
that you don't like doing, that you previously felt bad about, and now you just feel
Ah,
good about.
yeah. Right.
So that's really nice.
So in that example you just gave about like the different mates that do different things like
Yeah,
soccer, zoo here, is there
yeah,
one like in your experience, like is there one mate that is there particularly for um like a deeper emotional connection or vulnerability? I'm just curious if there it seems like in my mind, like though I haven't practiced polyamory, my mind
yeah,
it just sort of immediately is like, well, if there are all of these different partners, it seems like the like ability to go deep,
yeah,
establish like a level of intimacy with one person,
yeah.
it's distributed. So I wonder if there's like if there is one person that you
Mhm.
go to or you can trust with like your deepest stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, do you have a friend like that?
Like one friend that
Yeah,
who I go to for
yeah.
um
Or do you have more than one?
yeah, I mean it's a good question. I suppose I have more than one, but
Yeah,
it's not coupled with like being inside of somebody. Like there's that level of like there's like a level of depth that like when you're naked in bed with someone talking about your deepest stuff, it's different,
yeah.
you know?
Okay, if you say so.
Maybe it's
Yeah,
not.
maybe. So, I mean, I think that getting to that level of depth, like you do with a monogamous partner, takes longer when you're polyamorous. There is that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it might take several years because you only see someone once every 2 weeks or whatever, compared to if you saw them every day. But actually, you get new relationship energy, which is what we call it when you get a new partner, with your new partners anyway, where you're like, and you do see them every day for months, and your other partners are like, oh, ha, 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 you know, when are they gonna get out of new relationship energy? And it's just kind of sweet. But yeah, like me personally, I have like probably 2 or 3 people that I have that depth with.
Mhm.
And 2 of them have been inside me, and one of them hasn't.
Okay.
Because like, this is the interesting thing about polyamory is you then like, what do the words mean? What does partner mean? What does boyfriend mean? What does friend mean? And
Mm.
for me, like the hierarchy of what's most important, like typically in monogamy, you kind of have like your friends are at the bottom because you should cancel on them if an emergency comes up. And then your family are sort of up there because you have to do Christmas and you probably shouldn't cancel on them. And then it's your partner, right? Like your wife or your husband. They're the most important because they're the parent of your children and you live with them and blah. Whereas for me in polyamory, it's kind of completely inverse. So people I have sex with is like the lowest, and I call that partner, like sexual partner.
Mhm.
And then the people, then my family, they're like kind of this weird category where I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with you, but I do. So they're there. And then at the top is friends, because like partners come and go
Yeah.
so often, but friends are really important. And like, you sometimes have sex with your friends, but I would
Mm.
say it's the friendship that's the enduring part, and it's the emotional part, and it's the good part. So for me, like friends is way, way more important. So
Yeah.
I would say that the emotional depth that I have with the people that I have it with is because I'm their friend.
Mm.
Um, and it's a kind of side issue that we've had sex together. In fact, it just becomes, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but sex becomes blasé. You're just like, oh, whatever. Oh God, there's another sex party. Yawn, I'm too tired. I just want to go home.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're just like, what? Oh, don't care. And I think once you get enough and it's out of the way, you're just like, oh, actually, I'd
Yeah.
rather I'd rather
Yeah.
deepen this friendship.
Do you miss, is there something that you miss about sex not being blasé?
Not being blasé. Well, no, I mean, me personally, because I was raised in a Christian cult, I still find like very ordinary sex very exciting.
Mm.
So that's cool. And
That is cool. The
yeah, it's
Christian
great.
cult the Christian cult doesn't sound that cool though.
It's really not cool, but like now that it's over, it just keeps reaping rewards, like finding vanilla sex very exciting. Um,
Mm.
so I
Mhm.
don't know. Do I miss? It's a good question. But then there's always some, well, not always, but you know, there's always the possibility of someone new. So like sex
Mhm.
with a new person's really scary. Sex with a not new person like is really kind of comforting. Or you know, if you can go, or sex with a person where you're emotionally deep but you haven't had sex with them before, and then that's really cool. So I
Mhm.
don't know. There's a lot of possibilities when it comes to relationships and sex. So I don't think I'm personally gonna exhaust it particularly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Although I
It's
have
both
started
blasé
wanting,
it's both blasé and there are a lot, you have many choices. There are different, a
yeah,
lot of different types of sex you can be having.
yeah, definitely, yeah. So I don't think I miss it yet, but maybe I will, because I'm starting to enjoy things like power more than sex. And I mean not sexual power, I just mean run of the mill power. Kind of interesting
Ha
to me.
Yeah. Okay, so, we're coming near the end of our time, but
Yes.
I do kind of wanna, talk about power for a minute.
Yeah. I think I was actually having a conversation with Rival Voices on Twitter just now on like the tweet about this live stream about having power over yourself. Well, Rival Voices said this, that you start by trying to have power over yourself, and when you achieve that, you have power in the world. So, or
Mhm.
that's what I was suggesting, and so Rival summarized that, and I think that that is what I was getting at. So it's kind of like economic power or fabrication power, like the power to create things, um, and also just like normal power, like like getting to the top of an institution, or starting one that's influential. Like I find these things very interesting, and with the Keegan development stages, I kind of think pretty much everyone in government and at C-level of companies are probably Keegan vibes, because, and maybe they're low empathy as well, because they're quite happy to like use every skill that they have to get all the way to the top of a kind of like crazy sociopathic organization. So yeah, so it's interesting. It's like philosophically attractive. But, and you know, it's just normal personal attractive as well, the idea of power. So yeah, I guess that's that's the sanitized version.
Wait, is there something about like your relationship to power today being different than maybe what it used to be? Like
Yeah.
like even just that desire to pursue power in a like real world factual reality economic context. I'm curious, like that wasn't online before and is now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, your first comment is excellent. That my relationship to it has changed. Yeah. So like in social justice, Jessica, it was very much like I have no power and everyone else has power, and then they're tyrannizing me with it. That was kind of the frame. And now I don't feel that anymore, but I think it probably only because of things that have actually happened. You know, I was right to feel it then, and I'm kind of right to not feel it now. Yeah, so I definitely have changed my relationship to like powerful things. Maybe it's just literally feeling like I have access to it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I've been in some really interesting conversations about the left having social power, like intense social power, and the left are the people that are always saying that they have no power. And it's true that they don't have capitalistic power, like economic power, but they have like all the social power. So yeah, apparently so you know, certain people who might have capital are like, we have shit parties and no amount of money can fix this, and it's very greedy of everyone on the left to hoard all of the social power, which yeah, I think is a really interesting,
That
like,
is
way
interesting
to think about it. Yeah, so actually maybe I had tons of power then and I was complaining, and now I'm just more realistic that I have the power that I have.
Yeah. It's funny, like I spent most of my early 20s as an artist and kind of identified as like a vagabond who didn't care, like didn't really care about the like trappings of material society. And really, if I really look closely at it, is I think I was just afraid of like what it would take to like claim power.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think I agree. Yeah.
yeah, I resonate with what you're saying now. It's like more than I ever have. I'm like, oh, power. Okay. Like it feels like how does that actually feel like when I think about it, or think about like strategize of what context I could actually accrue more power. But
and I think it's like money, it doesn't have to be evil.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's just a process. So you can have you can make ethical decisions around it. It's not because we think that money is power and is inherently evil, and that money is inherently evil as well. Or I used to think that. But I don't think it is. I think actually you can, it's a process that you can then like have pass through you, and you can put ethics on it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I heard this. I think it may have been like from an astrologer or something. But something she said to me was like it's rare, like holding court with true power, or true when you actually have the ability to be in the presence of true power, these moments are rare. So like pay very close attention to when those moments happen, and be strategic about how you show up in that space. And that's like that's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, if I noticed I was in that situation, I think I would really enjoy it as well.
Hmm.
It's like, even if it's someone else who has the power, it's just bathe in it, you know?
Yeah. 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 Well, this has been such a fun conversation.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on and talking with me.
it's been a great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you want to plug? We're in the plug zone right now. If you want to say anything.
Plug zone. No, Sentence Maker is sleeping. There's going to be another one in May, probably.
Mm,
I need to get over the first one first.
okay.
But I think I should probably plug my blog. Read Theory Engine. It's where all my ideas go to be words.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you on Twitter.
Yeah. See you on Twitter, Colin. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Okay. Be well.
Bye. You too.
Bye.